Let's get on to solving this sentence correction question. We're going to be doing it in two modes, right? In the first mode, what I call as a test mode. Our objective is to get to the answer the quickest possible time. In the second one, I'll be handling the test mode. The second mode, which is a learning mode, Swetha will step in and she'll look at are there things that we can learn outside of just getting the answer right. There might be other aspects of the correct answer option which we would have missed out while getting to the answer because we needn't have even touched upon that to arrive at the correct answer. But we could learn something from that. More importantly, there are 4 other incorrect options. Can we check out, can we learn something from each of those, right? So that's a learning mode thing that Swetha is going to be doing. Let's get started with the test mode. Let's try and see if we can get to this answer in about a minute. Doing a quick vertical scan of the 5 answer choices to spot the differences. I see admit defeat in A, C, D, and I see be defeated in B and E. So at some level, I know that it is not just grammar, there is something to do with meaning. So let's read a little bit more of the sentence. We can't just go with the answer options. I'm going to start from this place where the skeptic starts. Skeptics would be well advised to admit defeat. That is one possibility. Skeptics would be well advised to be defeated. I could advise you to solve 300 sentence correction questions if you have to score well in the GMAT AC section. I could advise you to get rest so that you recuperate fast. Can I advise you to be defeated? It's like asking you that, hey, go get defeated. The skeptics cannot be asked to get defeated. That is nonsensical. It does not make sense at all. So meaning-wise, be defeated does not fit this picture. So you can basically eliminate choices B and E. Let's check out whether the right one makes sense. Skeptics would be well advised to admit defeat. You can advise them, we can tell them, hey guys, you lost the case. Gracefully admit defeat. So that is something which makes sense here. So down to answer choices A, C, D, eliminating B and D. Let's read further on. When I read, I again spot some difference, right? In both A and D, I see whether or not, and in C, I see whether. Quickly run through from the beginning, from the admit part. Admit defeat on the issue of whether or not she is sold. That is what A and D state. Admit defeat on the issue of whether she is sold. That is what option C says. Is whether or not a right usage to start with? Is it per se, not just in this sentence, is it per se a right usage? What does whether or not mean? Whether or not is tenable, is a right usage in quite a few instances. What it means is irrespective of the outcome. Let's look at an example. Whether or not it rains this evening, I'll go jogging, right? Essentially, I'm saying it doesn't matter. If it rains, I'll be jogging this evening. If it does not rain, I'll be jogging this evening. So whether or not is used in the context of irrespective of the outcome. Where will I use whether? I'm not sure whether I'll jog this evening. So essentially, I'm trying to say that I may jog, I may not jog. So this is a difference in the meaning between whether or not and whether. Let's check out what would make sense here. They're asking skeptics to admit defeat on the issue of whether or not she's sold. You're asking the skeptics to admit defeat on irrespective of whether she sold. You're saying that you admit defeat if she sold it. You admit defeat if she did not sell. What are you asking them to admit defeat on? So it does not make sense in this context. What would have probably made sense is what sentence C says, option C says. Admit defeat on the issue of whether she sold more books. So they're asking admit defeat on that. You don't even question whether she sold more books. She did sell more books is what the author is trying to say. So whether or not is incorrect in this context. So let's eliminate answer choices A and D. Choice C is the correct answer. I'm not sure if you guys have seen an enhanced score report of the GMAT, either yours or one of your friends. The ESR actually gives us more information about how well we performed in the GMAT. It gives you a breakup of the different kinds of questions, not just in quant, it could be problem solving, data sufficiency, not just at that level. It goes even more granular. It'll kind of tell you in sentence correction, did you make a mistake in grammar or did you answer questions that were testing communication? These are the 2 ways in which GMAT classifies sentence correction questions. This question, there's no subject-verb agreement error. There is no parallelism error. There's no pronoun error. There's no error in the context of grammar. This is a kind of question which tests how well do you understand the meaning, the logic behind the sentence. This is what GMAT would classify as a communication kind of question. I think this question covered all that is to be covered, but I'm sure Swetha will have the last word. She'll have 2 more things to add. So I'm going to step away and let Swetha take over.
So do I have anything to add to this question? Of course I do. I always have things to add, right? And we're just going to talk about 2 things in this sentence. We're going to look at the question. All the rules that Baskar used to eliminate the answer options were perfectly valid, and the question does test you on the communication rather than on fundamental grammar rules. We're going to look at the tail end of this sentence, which Baskar did not get to because he had already arrived at the answer. And in the exam, do that. You've arrived at the answer, mark it, move on, you're under time pressure. But for the purpose of learning, let's look at the tail end of our sentence. In each of the sentences, we're saying she sold more books than, and then the last part is changing, than any other novelist, than every other novelist, and then you have some answer options that have the verb has, one option that has did, and a couple of options that don't have a verb at all. So how do you complete the comparison? Always ask yourself, what are we comparing? Are we comparing Agatha Christie to other novelists? Or are we talking about the number of books sold by Agatha and the other novelists? Right? We are talking about the number of books sold by Christie versus the number of books sold by every other novelist. That's the issue that is being discussed. That's why when we begin the sentence, we're talking about how the books that were written by Christie are still in print in multiple formats and dozens of languages. So there can be no doubt that she has sold more books than any other novelist has, is what you're going to say. Now, the reason I'm going to use a has, first off, I want to establish you definitely need a verb. If you use an answer option such as D, which doesn't have a verb at all and just says than any other novelist, you are comparing books sold by Christie to other novelists. You can't compare books to novelists. It has to be novelist to novelist or books to books. So that would be an incorrect comparison, and that's another reason for you to not go for D. Now, if I look at the other answer options, I have either the verb has or I have the verb did. Now, the time indicator in the sentence, your options are using the word ever. So you're saying, out of all the novelists who have ever written books from the past till now, Christie has sold more books, is what you're saying. So the verb here that you want to use is either the present perfect or the present perfect progressive, which is the verb that you would use for an event that started in the past and is continuing into the present. And that's why has would be the right verb here. What you're actually saying is has sold, than any other novelist ever has sold. Now, if you repeat the main verb, that supportive verb, that is enough. You don't need to repeat the main verb. So the sold is kind of implied there. You don't need to repeat the main verb, but you definitely need to have a has. What happens when you use a did? Did puts it in the simple past. Now, I will use a past tense if I am talking about events that have completed. If, say, for example, there are no other novelists anymore, like no one's writing novels at all, then you can say, out of all those people who used to write novels in the past, Christie sold more books than any other person ever did in the past. So if all the events were completely in the past and have no tie to the present, that's when you will use the simple past construction. For example, you can say, out of all the ancient Indian rulers, this person had more subjects than any other ruler ever did. You can use a did in that context because there are no existing Indian rulers. The monarchy system does not exist anymore. So it's an event that is completely in the past. There are still people who write novels, so you can't use a simple past. You need to use the present perfect. Now, you didn't need to know this rule in order to be able to eliminate the answer options here. So it's perfectly fine to just go with admit and whether. And it's very likely that that was the intention of the GMAT 2, to test you on the meaning that the sentence is trying to convey. But in a different scenario, now that you know how to use the present perfect in the simple past, you might be able to apply this rule to determine the answer. For more of our videos on the theory and on discussion of questions, you can sign up as a trial user on wzko.in/core, and you can also subscribe to the channel. Get your friends to do it as well.